Hi everybody, well I'm at the most amazing winter wonderland here in Galgorm after the event this morning that I was very grateful to MC for Danske Bank, and this was a conversation all around the economy in Northern Ireland and looking ahead to what is in store in 2024. And I had three fantastic panelists, all of whom I've tagged up there, and I'm going to be referring to each one of them as we go along, and here is a summary of the insights. Okay, started off with Conor Lambe, and he talked about that the growth rate in the economy in Northern Ireland, he said, has been modest but better than expected. He said there has been indeed been a fall in consumer spending. He said inflation has now fallen to 4.6%, but also he said employment, of course, the unemployment rate is now at 2.1%, which is below the average of the UK and below the long-term average for Northern Ireland as well. Now, Stephen went on then to talk to us about the fact that businesses in Northern Ireland have faced many challenges, are still standing, are incredibly busy and have shown remarkable resilience. And he particularly pointed towards that the ingenuity of industry in Northern Ireland is going to win out in the future as well. And then from there, John Paul went on then to talk to us about the fact that we are now in a position of where team transitory, he said, weren't right, is that instead inflation did get embedded into the system and action really needed to be taken along the way. He said that interest rates look like they may actually be heading for a table mountain scenario where they've gone up and now they're going to flatline for a while and possibly longer than markets are anticipating. He said we should be careful in thinking that the fight against inflation is won, and many people have been saying that the last mile is the hardest, and he said that that is something that we certainly need to bear in mind. So then also I added my own 2 cents into the conversation, and it just pointed out the value of collaborating in business between business and universities. So in Northern Ireland, for example, there are KTPs, knowledge transfer partnerships, where you can collaborate directly with the university around an innovation problem. They're fantastic initiatives, and I shared my own experience of the Innovation Partnership, which is something similar that happens in the South. I also talked about Innovation Vouchers, and that was the way we started building our own relationship with the university we went on to work with, as well as Innovation Boost, an initiative as well with InterTradeIreland. Just all of those are really interesting supports as people may be looking ahead to planning for 2024 and how they can deal with the challenges and opportunities that they face. Okay, then after that then I moved on to my second question, and this time we looked towards 2024. So I asked Conor again, first of all I said, right, what do you think we are looking at? So he said he does see inflation falling. He doesn't quite see it falling below the 2% level, but he does anticipate that it would fall. He thinks wages will still be at a high rate, which will keep demand high. But he also said that fiscal policy is likely to be tight. He also thinks the labour market will be tight as well, but we may see a little bit of rising employment, but he is expecting positive economic growth in the UK and specifically in Northern Ireland over the next year. Now Stephen, he said, right, think about labour shortages and just imagine from this day forward you could never recruit somebody again. What would you do if you knew that? And he said it's an extreme thought, but it is there to help us think through this. So he said, for example, one of the things we should do is to make our own companies more sticky. How do we make sure that we hold on to the talent that we have? He also said it's important that we think about our employer brand as well as our business brand. He said we need to invest in automation, and he said that there may come a time in Northern Ireland where there are no net new people added to the economy. So we need to bear in mind the very realistic fact of how employment in the economy can interact in the future. John Paul then, as he looked forward, he said that the markets are predicting that interest rates in the UK would be higher than other parts of the world, for example in the EU, well in the Eurozone and also in the US. As a result of that, he said sterling is likely to remain strong. And that, of course, that's brilliant if you're going on holidays or you're importing, not as good if you're exporting. But he points towards the interest rate differential as the reason behind that. He also said that inflation is likely to go down slowly, and also, of course, again, going back to that same point, the key thing is that it's likely to go down at a slower pace, relatively speaking, to the rest of, certainly the developed world. Now, at this point, again, I interjected with my own thoughts, and that is that business owners, of course, have to put enormous time and effort, gratefully of which I'm one, into their companies. But it's also important that business owners help their companies help them. So 3 things that I put forward this morning is, have you got a succession plan in mind, or do you know when you might sell in the future if the opportunity was to arise? And I said, imagine that I was going to ride in a white horse and I was going to put forward a blank check and we were going to agree a number that I would put on that check and I would buy your business. Would you be ready to sell? emotionally, systems-wise, process-wise, product-wise. Have you got a business or have you got a busy job? And when you think about that, then of course you can always aim towards where that might go. The second thing I said is, have you considered and maximised the opportunities you have around your pension? Particularly really busy people, and particularly people who are responsible for that, for taking care of themselves, may not be the most inclined to do it. If you haven't started a pension, or if you haven't talked to somebody about setting up a pension, or if you haven't talked to somebody about maximising your pension contributions relative to your affordability, well, it's a great time of year to do that before the year finishes up. And then in addition, the third thing that I put forward is, are you investing in your own learning and development to future-proof yourself and your own abilities as a leader? Okay, then moving on, then the next area that I talked to everybody about was, what do we particularly need to be watchful for in 2024? Conor started off with 3 very distinct points. He said, number 1, inflation again, and where that's going to go. Number 2 is political uncertainty, and number 3 are skills shortages and recruitment challenges, all of which had been touched on to a degree, but he really very clearly pointed out that they're the known knowns that we need to look out for in 2024. Now, moving on from there then, Stephen said, okay, there are amazing opportunities available to companies and we need to figure out how we can pursue those. He said market access is a challenge, but of course also that can be looked at as an opportunity. He said the importance of capital investment is key, and particularly looking at government incentives about how to do that. Again, whether it comes to automation or building your people, or the opportunities to avail of different finance elements as well to invest in your plant, he said they are all key. He also said that the political uncertainty that's happening in Northern Ireland, that an end is nigh at some stage, that will have to stop, and of course decisions will have to be made. And he said, you know, there are likely to be moments next year of where there are going to be big developments and opportunities to really make big changes happen. John Paul then went on to talk about how the balances on bank accounts have grown over COVID, so therefore of course banks have money to lend and are keen to do so. He spoke about the volatility that would come if there was various different characters elected in the US election. He spoke about the 2 wars that we didn't anticipate happening. He spoke about where the UK election is looking to go at the moment and the implications of that. He spoke about the Chinese economy, and he also spoke about inflation and wage, both cost inflation and wage inflation. And then I also just put one last point to everybody, and that is that it is the time of the year when a lot of us are planning. And I shared that one of the skills that I really worked on myself this year has been my own ability to make decisions, but drive decision making down through the business, and also how I had read a couple of books to help with in that regard. I have to say, I brought a book with me, and there's lots and lots of people have been taking pictures of it and all sorts of things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what it is here all together, because it's really, really useful. So this is it. It's called The Decision Book, 50 Models for Strategic Thinking, and it has just given me a way in which to look at different problems that need different decision-making factors, also helping me to think about how I might have certain conversations with the team about what they're planning for the future, as well as, of course, ways to get to know myself better. There's a whole section of decision models in here to help you with your own self-awareness. So here, as I say, live from Galgorm, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed to Danske Bank for having me. Really appreciate Conor, Stephen and John Paul, each of the 3 of them being superb panellists. Thank you to Claire McGarry for giving me the opportunity to work with Danske Bank again. And also wish you all the very best, and make sure and check out the full podcast of the conversation this morning. Thank you everybody, and happy Christmas.